On this channel, accuracy of research is something I take very seriously, and part of the reason why I'll never put anything out quickly. And when I make an error, I like to bring it up or update it in a later video. So as we are in the midst of our reassessment of Nogai, a prince in the late 13th century Golden Horde, and I made an error regarding his father, well, it's probably important enough to get its own video. Especially since I'm not the only one who has made this mistake. In doing so, we'll highlight some aspects of one of our most important historical sources, as well as perhaps some hints at Nogai's early life that have survived. Eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed a change in Nogai's family between my previous two videos. In my previous writing, including my MA thesis, I stated that Nogai's father was Tutar, one of the Jochid princes killed by Hulagu Ilkhan sometime after the sack of Baghdad. I am not the only one to have made this statement either, and it made sense. Nogai's first role in the sources was as a commander, leading a Jochid army against Hulagu, and Rasheed Aldin, our main source for this matter, highlights how Nogai wanted revenge for Tutar's death. So it seemed rather simple that Nogai was given this command in order to avenge his father's death. In 1288 and 1290, another Jochid prince, Tama Tokta, was given an army to lead against the Ilkhanid. Not coincidentally, his father Balaki was one of the princes killed by Hulagu. Given how revenge was often key to Mongol justifications for a campaign, it all fit together rather nicely. Except, as Rasheed Aldin indicates, Tutar was not Nogai's father, but his first cousin. Nogai's father was actually an individual named Tatar. I was kind of annoyed when I made this realization while rereading Rasheed Aldin's work a few weeks ago. Is this a case of Rasheed Aldin confusing the names Tutar and Tatar? No. Rasheed is consistent in making Nogai's father Tatar, and Tutar being his cousin, the son of Tatar's brother Minkadar, both sons of Joshi's son Boyle. As far as I have been able to judge, this is consistent among all of the sources, though Rasheed offers, as usual, the most detail. You might wonder why we should trust Rasheed Aldin's account, given that he was a vizier in the service of the Ilkhan, the Jochid's sworn enemy, and also wrote some 4 decades after the Berka-Hulagu War. Firstly, Rasheed Aldin was an incredibly intelligent individual, and importantly, one with knowledge of Mongolian. From his perch as Ilkhanid vizier, he collected as much information as he could, and remains perhaps the single most important source for Mongolian history in the 13th century. Most of his Mongol history was based on now lost Mongolian and even Chinese documents. Some of these, as Christopher Atwood has demonstrated, he was very proud to have access to, and preferred their information over Arabic and Persian sources on the Mongols. His information was not merely textual, but oral. The Ilkhan Ghazan and the Yuan dynasty ambassador Bola Chingsin he consulted, though their influence is likely overstated. Rasheed also mentions gathering information from envoys from the Golden Horde when they visited the Ilkhan's court. Kelmashaka, one of the highest ranking women in the Golden Horde and one who had great influence among the Jochids, also maintained constant contact with the Ilkhans, to whom she sent friendly messages and kept them informed on events there. Lastly, at some point one of Nogai's wives fled to the Ilkhanite, and Rasheed may have consulted her, though personally I doubt it for reasons I will address in a future video. Rasheed Aldin viewed himself as an intellectual and liked to make sure his information was accurate, though he still made mistakes. When he got access to better sources, he would update his work. For example, his manuscripts have 3 different versions of the family tree of the Chagatais, each made as new information was gathered. When he could not find something out, he remarks upon it or on the fact that he was given conflicting details and at times even mentions his sources. While he certainly has his staunchly pro-Toluid bias, he was a far more thorough compiler than many contemporaries. A great amount of space in Rasheed Aldin's Jami al-Tawarikh is dedicated to these genealogies, and it was not a task he took lightly. If you are not happy with the genealogy provided by Rasheed Aldin on a given Chinggisid, well, unfortunately, you are unlikely to find any surviving 13th or 14th century sources which offer greater accuracy. And chances are, most latter medieval and modern sources consulted Rasheed anyways. So what, specifically, does Rasheed tell us? That Nogai's grandfather, Jochi's 7th son Boyle, had 2 sons, Tatar and Minkadar. Tatar had only 1 son, Nogai. Minkadar was a bit of a busier boy with 9 sons. Tutar seems to have being the eldest son of Minkadar and had a single son of his own recorded. Of the lives of Tatar and Tutar, we are told very little beyond their names. Tutar was among 3 Jochid princes sent with Tumans to assist Hulagu. They joined him in northwestern Iran in late 1256, taking part in the attacks on the Ismaili fortresses as well as the siege of Baghdad in 1258. Sometime in the aftermath, the 3 princes were killed on Hulagu's order, accused of sorcery, though it seems the real reason was Hulagu's annoyance at their efforts to enforce Jochid claims on the lands Hulagu was conquering. The deaths of Tutar and the other 2 princes were among the principal causes of the war between Berka and Hulagu, as attested in most of the sources. Rasheed Aldin is very clear in stating that revenge for Tutar's death was, at least for Nogai, one of the main drivers in his assault. What can we make of this regarding Nogai? What I will offer next is entirely speculation, so don't go quoting it as if it is definite proof. But everything I say is based on what Rasheed tells us. Let's make one assumption first, that Boyle's 2 sons, Tatar and Minkadar, were close. As Boyle himself is essentially unknown, perhaps he died early. The combination of intense alcoholism and war being their main profession meant it was hardly unusual for a Mongol prince to die an early death. Assuming Rasheed was correct, and they had no siblings, and their father died early, the 2 boys relied on each other. We can note that Nogai was also recorded as an only son. Nothing else is known of his father Tatar's life. Did Tatar die early on, from some disease or fall from horseback or battle? Possibly. Perhaps he died soon after Nogai's birth, and his younger brother, Minkadar, then named his firstborn son, Tutar, as a homage to Tatar. The similarity in names may be more than coincidental. Perhaps Tutar and Tatar actually bore the same name, but one form got corrupted through whatever informant Rasheed got it from. Assuming Nogai's father died early, perhaps while Nogai was still a boy, then Minkadar likely took him in and raised him. Minkadar did not yet have 9 sons running around, so one little extra Mongol wasn't going to make a difference. Then in this case, Minkadar's own son Tutar, even though he was Nogai's first cousin, was presumably close in age and became like a brother to Nogai. When Rasheed Aldin commented that Nogai sought revenge for Tutar's death, he may have been very correct in indicating the conflict was very personal. The war against Hulagu was very violent. Nogai fought viciously, was commented to have been a great warrior, and was rewarded with losing an eye in close combat. Assuming I'm right, Nogai had lost his adopted brother, the family that had taken him in after his father's death, and with all the anger of a young man descended from history's greatest conqueror, went into battle full of wrath. Let's also assume that my speculation from the last video that Nogai was a constant member of Berka's Ordu was correct. A strong personal bond to an adopted brother might not alone have been enough to warrant giving him an army to avenge him, in comparison to avenging his own father. So, Nogai must have had a strong relationship with Berka, and a reputation as a warrior of some kind, to have been granted such a favor. This was more likely to be granted if Nogai had been a follower of Berka for years, and an early convert to Islam after him, and thus, Nogai was entrusted as Berka's commander-in-chief, marching over the Caucasus in 1262 with one goal in mind: avenging the death of Tutar, his first cousin, childhood friend, and possibly adopted brother. That's all, of course, speculation, but speculation based on the primary sources. Given that Nogai's early life is unrecorded, these are possible details that might help illuminate this dark period, and give a hint to his human experience. One of the few personal details we know of Nogai from later in his life is that he loved his family. I don't think it is too extreme to imagine that this was a trait he had early in life too. And perhaps one thing that would always drive Nogai to fight fellow Mongols was anger at the treatment of his family. Keep that little nugget in mind. For our next video, we'll finally deal with the Berka-Hulagu War, so you can finally see what all the hullabaloo is about.